Greetings to all of you. On this Thursday, the 13th of July of the Gregorian year 2023, my greetings are mingled with sadness, indeed also with grief, dissatisfaction, and various other types of unpleasantness. This afternoon, our time, Indian Standard Time, I was listening to BBC World Service and was considerably shocked by the news that a certain country's Coast Guard turned back a boat about a week ago, a boat which carried most probably people who were fleeing their country from one of the largest continents of the world into another country on another continent. Some 80 people have already been recorded dead, while many others, perhaps hundreds of others, also have perished due to certain inhumanity exercised by certain members of the Coast Guard of that particular country. A country with long civilization, perhaps the oldest in Europe. A country which once boasted of its philosophers and artists of various types and kinds. A country which is well known throughout the world. But this is not the only incident or instant which worries me, causes my grief, my anxiety, and inflames me to rage. Various other countries of the world are equal to be blamed. Yes, they are equally to be blamed because they are equal in inhumanity. I mentioned earlier on various occasions, and indeed I have been expressing my disappointment and grief, and also my anger, at least for a year and a half, precisely since February of the preceding year 2022. Yes, a country which has been prosecuting senseless wars in plural against their neighbor, considerably defenseless comparing to that prosecutor of the war. A country which once fought for justice, or even more than once, both during the First and the Second World Wars. I know this too vividly because my late grandfather served as a physician during the First World War and was stationed both in England and in France between the years 1914 and 1918. And returning to India, he joined the Indian Congress movement, the peaceful, non-violent movement, headed by late Dr. Bidhan Chandra Roy. His dream was to see his country being free from all kinds of class discrimination, caste discrimination, racial discrimination, discrimination based upon people's background. Yes, I emphatically said people's background, not putting the apostrophe immediately after people and before the S, but peoples because we are a country of various culture, various different types of communities, languages, religions. Yes, we are not merely one people, but peoples. Today, not merely Eastern Europe, but Far East, East Asia, is also threatened, at least by two notorious dictators. One of them is too eager to march into another independent country speaking the same language. And another one is developing nuclear arsenals, not merely at the cost of the poorest of the poor of his country, but at their blood. Too many of his countrymen and women are starving. Many of them are confronted with the perils of starvation, even to death. Today, various parts of Europe are raged by heat waves. Heat wave is prevailing in various countries, including Spain, parts of Italy, and no doubt France and various other parts. In our country, we had this heat wave hardly a few weeks ago, when temperature rose above 40 degrees Celsius in my hometown and in various other parts, even a temperature beyond 45 degrees Celsius, causing both casualties and deaths. But such suffering is almost negligible comparing to the sufferings of various other peoples, again with a plural, of different races of the world. It is not merely disappointing, not merely a sad incident, but too grave a tragic incident, what is happening in Sudan today. The United Nations organization has turned its back towards them and letting the people kill each other, even in defiance of their own charter, known as the UN Charter, a charter of the United Nations organization. Various other countries have turned their back towards those which have been crushed by military powers, even by overruling the elected government. One of my neighboring countries is to be remembered, even though I'm not mentioning the country by name. We, as their fellow human beings, are responsible, answerable, if we turn our back towards the victims. We need to speak out, speak up and speak out within the framework of the legal systems of the world, at least the civilized world. Even befitting the Charter of the United Nations, even though the United Nations organization is failing time and time again to maintain peace in the world, befitting their own charter. Yes, as I said this on earlier occasions, the United Nations organization is doomed to fall into the same trap of its predecessor, the League of Nations. I do not know why suddenly my camera betrayed me for a moment. I myself could not see my own self in the camera for a while. But returning to this very spot once again, I only, as a modest public servant, and to the best of my ability, beg all of you most humbly to come forward and speak out, and speak up and speak out again and again, time and time again, even relentlessly, on behalf of those victims who are unable to speak up or speak out on their own or are too frightened to do so. Remembering the fact, or even facts in plural, that we need them as much as they need us. Yes, I believe and remain convinced that it is true humanity which makes us worthy of our human births. If we claim to be human beings, if we venture to claim to be human beings, we must befit our human births by showing humanity towards others. I said a moment ago that I begin to fear that the United Nations organization is about to fall into the same trap of its predecessor, the League of Nations. I call upon the world communities, particularly those countries and states of the world whose leaders and people believe in true humanity, in natural justice and equity for all, even in true democracy, to come forward and form another international organization which should function properly without being affected by veto cast by any of its members, and thus blocking the organization. It is heartbreaking to know that a single member, a single permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations organization vetoed to prevent humanitarian aids reaching the victims in Syria and perhaps even in parts of Turkey, so severely affected by earthquakes only a few months ago. I question I query, with all due respect towards my fellow human beings. Yes, before you, most respected and beloved viewers of this live telecasting of mine, can we look into the mirror, into our own eyes, and say we are worthy human beings? If we fail to speak out on behalf of those victims who are crying for help, or even are silenced from being able to cry out for help. Bidding you a solemn night, I remain at your service, even as your fellow human being. If you consider me to be worthy of the same claim. Thank you once again. And bid you the protection of the same Almighty God who created all of us, even those victims,